Hey everyone, Phoebe Rizzo here. And, well, I always try to maintain a classy atmosphere on this show, showcasing the best, most refined movies I can come across. So, in that vein, today we're going to look at Cannibal Terror. Now, despite this two-pack, the more eye-catching one possibly being Devil Hunter, which I'm sure I'll get around to, we're going to actually go with Cannibal Terror, simply because when I put this disc in, it was the first one that popped up. That was the entirety for making that decision. I've not seen either of these films before this. And well, now let me just say that I am somewhat cinematically omnivorous. I can watch almost anything comfortably and be somewhat entertained by it. It is my gift, it is my curse. And today, well, this one might have put it a little to the test. Okay, so little bit of backstory history on Cannibal Terror, or Terrier Cannibal. It's a French-Spanish co-production that was wildly unavailable for quite a while, due to it being completely banned in Britain for several years. It was on their Video Nasties list, which is a list of films that were banned or had to be heavily edited to be released. Now, this one's a 1981 production. It's, well, it's a 80s gore fest cannibal movie. There's only so much you can go there. Now, this one is a dubbed film from the original French. Now, this disc did come with a French language track, which most of these re-releases do not have, which I was impressed by, but there's no subtitles. So I had to watch the dubbing. And when these kind of movies get dubbed, oh dear. The dubbing is terrible. The acting, for that regard, is very off-putting. But I was trying not to judge this film based on just the dubbing, tried to go in on everything else, and it's still kind of a mess. So the plot. And right there is where the problems of this film begin. Now, this film is about two men, Mario and Roberto, and their femme fatale, I guess, Mina. I guess I should say, despite this being a French-Spanish co-production, I'm not entirely sure where this is supposed to be set. The way it goes about it, and there being a jungle and cannibals, you usually think Amazon. So I think this is somewhere on the Mexico-Venezuela border, or down towards there. It's at some border. It never says where. And there does seem to be some sort of Spanish-Mexican more styling of locales, but I can't be completely sure on where this is set. That's another issue. But anyway, these three are criminals. Mario and Roberto are kind of two-bit thieves, and it's shown pretty clearly that they are not very bright thieves. And they're not making very much money in stealing from boats, so Mina gets the idea to kidnap a young girl and ransom her to her back to her wealthy parents. After their kidnapping, well, the kidnapping seems to go off without a hitch, mostly because it happens off screen. And that was frustrating, particularly with how the kid is, so I'll get into that later. But it goes from one scene of them just sitting in a bar talking about, hey, we should kidnap this girl. I mean, we did introduce the girl just before with Mina walking by, just kind of spotting her, talking to her for a moment, and then continuing on before hatching the scheme. And then the next scene, the girl's kidnapped there with them. Well, actually, the next scene is her father getting a call saying, oh, your daughter's been kidnapped. So, I would have liked to have seen how that went down, but they're not going to show me. So anyway, their getaway plan is ruined pretty quickly, and then they realize they have to go and hide out. So they make a couple calls and arrange for a ride down towards the jungle, where they can stay with a guy who's into the criminal element himself, and he can put them up until the heat dies down, and they could continue their ransom later. Okay, fine. So they go trek across the jungle. Their guide partway gets eaten by cannibals, but they still manage to get to their destination because he's out there in cannibal country, as they reference it, and with a local tribe of, they say, Indians in the movie, which to my recollection doesn't fit at all. I mean, even using that as a Native American stereotype, it still doesn't exactly work. But anyway, I digress. Essentially, they have a fairly decent plan of how to get across the border. Essentially, their driver's going to drive them to a point. They're going to cut across a stretch of jungle. She'll go through the actual checkpoint and then meet them on the other side and continue on. And that part actually went off without a hitch. Then, just when the car obviously breaks down a little bit later, their guide goes off to get some water for the radiator and gets cannibaled. And that cannibal scene I had some issues with. Mostly just her seeming to just be not acting at all during it. She struggles a little and then suddenly she doesn't seem like she's unconscious, but there's no sounds coming from her at all. Anyway, they still manage to get the car working and continue on to their destination. Okay, fine, cool. They're hiding out down there in wherever they are. Fine. But these guys are dumb. And this is where the problem happens. The whole film hinges on them being dumb and so reprehensible. Okay. Guys, little advice. If you are a criminal fleeing with a hostage, and you manage to get away and get taken in to a safe house, my advice to you, I shouldn't even have to say this, but these guys needed this advice. My advice to you, for the guy who's taking you in and protecting you, do not rape his wife. Under no circumstances is that a good thing to do. First off, you shouldn't rape at all. Second off, if you're hiding out in a guy's home, why would you do that? Are you trying to get kicked out or assaulted by a guy who's known to aid and abet criminals? Not to mention the poor woman. Okay, so more advice. Should you have not heeded this advice and have proceeded to rape his wife, then do not agree to go off with this man alone into the jungle to go hunting. You are just asking to be killed at that point. Mario does all this. So he gets dragged out, he gets happily walked out to the jungle to be tied to a tree and left for cannibals. For the most part, the cannibals in this movie are really more incidental. With the exception of the one guy being pulled off into the woods, it's mostly just they seem to be there in the background while this kidnapping plot takes center stage. Anyway, there's no point in worrying about spoilers in an 80s exploitation movie. So, the parents, after doing this, of course, they tell the cops where these gangsters are, and then begins a chase scene as they're taking the little girl out into the jungle to try to get away, and cannibals happen. And that's where it goes from there. Okay. Another issue I have had here, which is the little girl. Now, with the dubbing, I can't really critique her acting very good. But I can critique her character, or utterly lack thereof. Now, I should count my blessings that she wasn't an obnoxious child character, because plenty of them are so over-the-top annoying in movies. But this girl is the most easily kidnappable child I have ever seen. I wish I could have seen how she got kidnapped, so because maybe that could help frame this a little bit better, make it make some kind of sense. But the first time we see her, she's just talks to this girl, to Mina. No problem, just, oh, hi, lady. They just talk for a few moments, and Mina seems nice at that point, so fine, okay. But once she's kidnapped, she's just sitting there, seemingly completely content and happy with her doll amongst these gangsters. Then they get on a plane, drove it out to the jungle. She's just happily walking along. They've taken her by the hand. She's not resisting. She's going along with them. She's talking happily. Oh, where are we going? Okay, I can wrap my head around that to a degree, that this kid just might be a little, not the brightest. I mean, she's like 6 or 7 maybe, tops. Anyway, but then it gets to the point where her parents are coming for her. She sees them driving up. Oh, that's Daddy's car. Criminals just take her by the hand and just lead her out into the jungle, and she just goes along. Oh, okay, we'll go. She doesn't protest, doesn't argue. And then when they go get assaulted by cannibals, it was kind of ridiculous seeing, like, the Mina and Roberto get tied to the stakes and Neo carried off. The little girl's just walking calmly behind, just following along, holding her doll, not a care in the world. Goes along, seems to follow whatever the cannibals request of her. I mean, okay, sure. But she just goes along with it. This girl, you don't even need candy to kidnap her. She just will go follow where you point her. No survival instinct on her at all. Boy. Next issue. There's a lot of really sloppy stock footage. The most egregious was like, oh, what's that? Oh, I guess it was just a bird. Then it cuts to stock footage of a bird. And when they're looking for a little girl, why are you showing stock footage at the top of a tree? And there's some other sloppy shots of it, but that one was the most egregious because all the music even cuts out on it, and the film quality completely changes. Other thing to address is the cannibals. Now, most movies of this type are not what you would call racially sensitive. That's pretty common for 80s, particularly amongst these exploitation kind of movies. But Cannibal Holocaust, this is not. Cannibal Holocaust actually found actual tribes of some natives for the region they were in, and while they weren't presented in the best of lights, they were ethnically appropriate. This movie, it seems to be mostly just a bunch of white guys. I mean, there's a few that might be Hispanic, and one guy I'm pretty sure was Asian. I mean, they don't do the blackface thing, except for one guy, but I think he was just covered in mud for camouflage, so I'll let that slide. But for the most part, it's a bunch of white guys with painted faces out there in the jungle, dancing around. Not helped by the fact that a lot of them have, like, comb-overs, or one guy has, like, these really thick mutton chops going. What? They didn't even try here for anything. Most of them just look like guys who just happen to take off their shirts and are really pasty white. Like, a lot of these guys haven't looked like they've even seen the sun for very long. Oh, boy. Also, I have a lot of issues with the cannibals, it seems. At first, while watching the film, I thought there were no cannibal women. I kept glancing to see if there might be, but I did not see any until the climax. And even then, at first, I was not sure. Because you just see like a bunch of smoke from and a woman dancing on the other side of it, but it was just a silhouette, so I wasn't 100% sure. Then you get finally one shot. One. Where you can actually see her. So as far as I can tell, this tribe has only one woman in it. You couldn't have mixed it up a little? Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. The climax of this movie is just kind of a mess. When it seems like they just started cutting things around because like they just jumped from having the main couple like tied up sitting on the ground to suddenly they're up on trees and stabbed a bunch of times. It's really hastily put together. The editing at the end, it just goes to hell. I will say, good point of this movie, its gore effects are actually pretty outstanding. The level of detail and viscera that they go with is really good, and it's worth seeing almost just for that alone. I will say I was not bored throughout this movie, just for saying what the heck is going to happen next with these imbeciles. And waiting to see more cannibal action, because when it's there, it's good. Despite the ethnically dubious makeup of the cannibals, when they're doing cannibal things, you're seeing cannibal things. In all honesty, this movie isn't terrible. It's got a lot of not good about it, but if you're going into a movie called Cannibal Terror, an 80s exploitation cannibal film, you're probably going to get what you're looking for. You're getting cannibals, you're getting gratuitous gore, you're getting over-the-top nudity, you're getting general sleaziness that you'd expect from an 80s cannibal movie. Now, well, Cannibal Holocaust, I actually rated it very highly and thought it was very well done. This one does nothing to really subvert the genre or play itself up above what it is. That said, the gore is good, and it at least was enthralling enough to see me through it. Like, I didn't hate this movie. I'm going to give it 2 MacGuffins. Mostly due to the gore content. It was really well done. And seeing some of these characters get their comeuppance was good. Though, another issue, now I'm thinking, I mentioned the girl got kidnapped off screen. There was one other egregious off-screen moment. And that's when Mario, the rapist, gets cannibaled. You don't see it. And a guy like that, you want to see him get ripped apart. You want it. So when they show him get tied to a tree and some cannibals coming up, and next time you just see his mutilated body, it's frustrating. This movie should have been at least a 3 to 4 MacGuffin movie. It had all the right elements, but the execution, no. 2. And a low 2 at that. That's it. 2 MacGuffins. Cannibal Terror. Now, probably not going to jump right into the next one on here, Devil Hunter, for a while. I got to cleanse the palate. Don't want to just go all in on cannibals for a bit. I might do a theme month every now and again, but this is enough for this one. I'll probably be doing a Netflix or Tubi or something roulette coming up. I usually don't like to name drop streaming services, but who cares? I did it anyway. I'll be pulling something up on streaming, I think, for my next one. Hopefully in a couple days. And, hopefully someone in the void joins me. I'd like to get some input. If anyone ever wants to make a request, drop it down to the comments. I'd gladly respond and take a look. Like I said, I'm omnivorous. Cinematically, I'll watch anything. And give it a little once over on here, if anyone's interested. So, ciao.